What's happening, everybody? Chris Fitzpatrick back here once again on Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with me as we tackle yet another really interesting topic in the world of job search, leadership, professional development, all the topics that we cover here on this page. I want to welcome everybody back one more time. If this is your first time checking out one of my videos, welcome, outstanding, thrilled to have you. And if you've checked out some in the past, I hope that this is another set of really good tips and tricks that you can use or that you can share with people in your network and around you to help them in their job search or in their leadership journey, whatever it is that you can get out of this. I hope it's something, and I hope it's something that you can share, right? And we can pay this forward. One more time, I just want to remind you, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. Just hit the bell and subscribe, and also that way you can be updated when new videos come your way. And again, feel free to share with anybody in your network that you think might be able to benefit from this. Our topic today, we're going to cover that point in the interview when the interviewer asks you if you have any questions for them. This is what I affectionately refer to as the do's and don'ts of interviewing the interviewer. All right, so congratulations. You've managed to navigate yourself through the application process. You've presented a resume that has piqued the interest of a recruiter and or a hiring manager. And now you've been invited into a job interview that you are, at least up to this point, genuinely interested in. So these are all good things, right? We chalk these up as wins. And you've navigated the nerves and the anxiety that can be associated with going into an interview in the first place, which is not nothing. And then on the big day itself, you've already addressed questions such as the dreaded strengths and weaknesses question, right? We covered that in a prior video. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And just when you think you're in the clear, now you arrive at this critical juncture in the interview when the interviewer says, do you have any questions for me? And the obvious answer is, of course, you have questions for them. You should have questions for them. You don't want to let this opportunity slip by. I have seen that happen where the interviewee looks at me and just shrugs and says, no, I really don't have anything. Everything's been covered, which is either the sign of a very thorough process or maybe a slightly underprepared candidate. So let's make sure it's not the latter. If you have prepared for this moment, and you should have prepared for this moment, then you should come away just fine. Even for the most confident interviewer, the thought of asking the right questions at the right time can seem a little bit daunting. So let's talk a little bit about the do's and don'ts of interviewing the interviewer. And there's a few specific keys to the interview that we're going to touch on today. So the first key to interviewing the interviewer is the concept of balance, okay? So first of all, you want to balance your confidence with your humility. Right. The object here is to show the interviewer that you feel that you are the best person for the job. Fact is, if you don't think that you're the best person for the job, it's going to be really difficult to try and convince somebody else of that. But you also don't want to come off as cocky or arrogant or overconfident. So questions like the ever popular, so when do I start? They are not now and never have been and never will be appropriate. So let's just get that off to the side, right? We want to balance our confidence with our humility. You want to balance your knowledge with your curiosity. Let your research guide your questions while also still being able to ask for information that you think will help you make the right decision should an offer finally come your way. You want to balance your enthusiasm with your emotional intelligence. It's okay to be excited about the interview and about the opportunity that you might land this job. You might really want this job. You might really need this job. And it's fine to demonstrate your enthusiasm and to be excited about it, but you also want to avoid appearing desperate. So self-management skills, which we talked about previously under emotional intelligence, are very important here as well. You want to balance speaking with listening. This falls under that 4 types of communication umbrella that I cover in most of my videos in some way, shape, or form. So construct thoughtful questions, but then make sure that you're listening intently to the answers to see if you can pick up on anything that the interviewer tells you that might be worth follow-up or an opportunity for you to launch into a greater discussion. Also, while you're doing this, try your best to observe the interviewer's nonverbal cues. Look what they're telling you without the words that they're saying. All right, so that's the first key. The second key to interviewing your interviewer is preparation. Preparation cannot be overlooked here. Doing this on the fly, hoping for the best, is not a great strategy. And even if you get lucky with it every once in a while, I heard a great quote last week in a training class. is that luck is great, but it's not scalable. Right? You can't actually have luck as a plan going forward and just hope everything goes your way. Preparation is a great strategy. Your research on the company should inform your questions well. This will allow you to ask more structured questions in the interview, while also demonstrating to the interviewer that you did your due diligence and that you have done your research, which is a good thing. Beginning one or two of your questions with something that you read on the company website or a trade publication, for example, this can really amp up your questions. This can be something that you can do that will help in your favor. So, for example, if you're interviewing with a company that makes and sells exercise equipment, right? Asking a question such as, where does this company see itself in 5 years, which is a very popular interview the interviewer question. But it's a generic question. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with where does the company see itself in 5 years. But really what it is it's a case of missed potential. There's so much more opportunity there. So try this instead, based off of some research that you may have done on the organization. Your organization's vision statement says that you seek to help people unlock the full potential of good health. How might I help support that vision in this role over the course of the next 5 years and beyond? I know it's wordy, but you're stating something from your research that shows that you did research, and then you're bringing it back to a question that is a little bit richer, it's more specific, and still shows the interviewer that you've prepared. And we're going to come back to that question in just a few moments. Now, the third key to interviewing your interviewer is selecting and asking strong questions. I don't advise going in with a long list of questions and expecting to ask every single one of them. In fact, if you do that, it might be indicative of questions that you asked that maybe didn't have the desired effect of going into more depth with your interviewer, right? You want these questions to build other conversation. You want these questions to lead into a greater conversation. And if you have time to ask 10, 11, 12 of them because the answers are so short, it either means that the interviewer is not really doing their job and giving you the time of day, or it just might mean that you're asking questions that didn't go deep enough. Most effective questions should open the door for more conversation, not just a 10-second response. That's not to say that you shouldn't have some quick hits ready if you need a simple answer to a question, but the main focus is on expanding your connection with the interviewer and reasserting your candidacy for the role. Even if you don't end up receiving or even accepting an offer, an interview remains a tremendous opportunity to build your personal brand with someone who is in a decision-making role. You never know whether your paths are going to cross again in the future, and there's no point to closing a door or burning a bridge. So you still want to make the best impression, even if it's a job that you realize during the interview that you don't want to take or a company that you don't want to work for. Another helpful tactic is to ask the question in a manner that projects you as the hire, not to ask it generically. So let's take our example from earlier. We use the question, how might I support the vision of this company in this role over the course of the next 5 years and beyond? You note the intentional use of I. How might I help support? Right? It's not a generic version such as how would somebody support the vision? How would one do this? How might someone help support? Or how would your employee help support? Our effective questions are going to center on what success looks like, right? And they're going to use those I statements wherever possible. Now, when we talk about demonstrating success, right, our effective questions are going to center around success in a way that might ask, for example, what are some milestones that will demonstrate that I've been successful in this role during my first year? Okay, what are some milestones that will demonstrate that I have been successful in this role during my first year? By asking questions in the first person and focusing on questions that describe success, you are offering a vision of yourself successful into the mind of the interviewer. You're essentially projecting that into their vision where they can now see you successful in the role because you've suggested it. And that is your intent. So we've discussed strategy, we've discussed philosophy. Let's get into some of the questions themselves. Some of these questions that I find particularly effective. Now, we've already covered two. We've talked about how might I help support your organization's mission or vision in this role over the course of the next 5 years and beyond. That's fine. And what are some milestones that will demonstrate that I have been successful in this role during my first year? And that's another really good question. I'm a big fan of questions that focus on individual performance and career, immediate impact, and long-term success. All right. So individual performance and career questions, those are important because you are being interviewed as an individual, and the interviewer needs to know what you can bring to the table, what you can bring to the organization. Now, this also includes questions about career pathing, about learning and development, about advancement. The milestones within the first year question that we discussed earlier covers this. All right, so that's the first of the categories of questions. Right, individual performance and career questions are anything that are going to ask about you specifically in this role, your performance, your future, your career. The second category of questions are what I refer to as team performance and skills gap questions. Now, these questions project how you will acclimate with your new team members and help make your new team successful, as well as uncovering what skills you possess that team and the organization as a whole really need. All right, so we'll talk more about team performance and skills gap questions. And then there's company questions. Now, company questions seek information about the larger organization and your role and your place in it. This is an area where your preparation is critical, and you don't want to ask generic questions that could have been easily answered with a simple internet search. Questions often focus on either short-term or long-term time frames. Questions posed in a short-term time frame will examine how you'll perform in your first 90 days to ensure continued support and also signaling to everyone involved in the interview process that hiring you was the right call. And of course, long-term time frame questions will ask about the future, like our first question about supporting the mission and vision of the organization 5 years and beyond. A mix of both of these timeframes is usually appropriate. It demonstrates that you're interested in making an immediate impact on the organization, but also having an eye on long-term success. And really, that's what a lot of organizations want from their interviewees and from their new hires. So let's talk about some of the questions. We'll start with individual performance and career questions. And this is just a few. Again, come up with your own, but I want to give you a couple options and some ways that you can start to think about these questions as well. So, for example, what are some of the projects I would be tackling early on in my time here? It's a question about your individual contribution and performance in a short-term time frame. What are some of the metrics I could expect my performance to be measured against? Great way to learn a little bit more about how the organization is going to be measuring you and looking at what is successful early on in your career. What are some examples of skill development opportunities I might be able to take advantage of? Now, as a learning and development guy, I love a question like this, right? This question is music to my ears. The hope is that any organization out there that's going to train and develop and invest in top talent is going to have some sort of L&D infrastructure or some sort of training opportunity that when you ask about it, they're going to be excited you're asking about it. Another great question is, for employees who have been successful in this position, what sorts of opportunities have they been able to move on to within the organization? Now, this assumes that the job you're interviewing for is one that other people have held previously. But the idea behind this question and any of the variables on it or any of the different ways you could ask it is, I intend to be successful. I would like to know what a career path might look like for me within this organization. How have your most successful people grown within the organization in the past? And then, of course, how might I help support your organization's mission and vision in this role over the course of the next 5 years and beyond? I still love that question. Finally, what are some milestones that will demonstrate that I've been successful in this role during my first year? We covered that one as well. So now let's go over to team performance and skills gap questions. A great example of a question here would be, can you tell me more about the team I'll be working with? What makes them unique? You're asking specifically about the team that you're going to be working with on a day-to-day basis. What makes them special? What makes them unique? What do I need to know about them before I go in and start working with them? What challenges is this team currently facing that I will be able to help them overcome? I love this question because you're asking about what kind of issues they're facing, what kind of challenges that they have, but you're also asking how you can help solve those issues and help that team to success, while also demonstrating confidence in your ability to help them overcome some of those challenges. Another question is, in addition to my own team, are there other teams I am likely to find myself working closely with? Maybe you're working with other departments, other divisions. Maybe you have teams that don't even work inside your organization. Maybe they work externally, and this is a great opportunity to find out about it, and also to position yourself as a team player, as somebody who focuses on team success. And then one of my personal favorites, what skill or skills is this team and organization most in need of to help achieve its mission and vision? This is a skills gap question. What skill does this team need? What skill does this organization need to help it succeed? And then we'll get into how you're going to parlay that into a conversation about your skills and how you can fill that skills gap. Company questions, third category, company questions. What are you, the interviewer in this case, what are you most excited about in the future for this organization? Love that question. It's a long-term thinking question, but it also is asking about something positive and something that creates excitement. Because the interviewer is likely to talk about something that excites them. That could be something that also is going to excite you. What are some of the most important values this organization holds? Values are a tremendous topic to bring up in an interview. We also see that, especially with some of our newer generational job seekers, our millennials, our Gen Zers, being values-driven is very important. Right? In fact, more so than ever before, having a value alignment with an organization is more important. So asking about those values and making sure they align with the values that you hold, really important opportunity to take advantage of in an interview. What is something important for me to know that new employees may not expect to see here? What are the surprises? What feedback have you gotten that new employees or new hires didn't see coming? I just want to know what might surprise me so that way I'm prepared for it. And honestly, those surprises say a little bit about culture. They don't also have to be bad surprises. They can be very good surprises. A lot of the organizations I've worked at before, people have come up to me and said, 6 months in, I'm really surprised how tight-knit the team is, how close they all get. I didn't expect that in my first organization, and that's always a tremendous compliment about the culture of an organization. Now, again, it's not practical to expect to ask 13 questions at the end of your interview, but if you identify some of your favorites, right, those questions that you're comfortable asking, and then you stick to 3 or 4 of them in that time frame at the end of the interview, then you're probably in pretty good shape. At the same time, though, if one of your go-to questions is answered during the interview itself, maybe the interviewer interviews a little bit like I do, where it's more conversational, it's not really an interrogation, it's not question, answer, we sort of go where the road takes us, that might lead you to find some of your prepared questions have already been answered. So just be ready to pivot a little bit. Maybe a topic came up during the interview that you want to explore further. Don't shy away from that just because you weren't prepared to ask that question. Make a pivot and say to the interviewer, I want to go back to that topic that we were talking about a little while ago where you mentioned ABC, and I'd really love to hear more about this. Can we go into more detail? Now, finally, I'm a huge fan of this last question. That is based on our discussion today. What is your biggest concern about my candidacy for this role? Not everyone loves this question, and certainly not everyone loves asking this question, but I like this question a lot. I also prefer it over its closed-end version. The closed-end version of it is, do you have any concerns about my candidacy for this role? If you begin it with, do you have any, it gives the interviewer the chance to just sort of brush it off and say, no, not really. I think we've answered all the questions. I think we're okay. And then they're going into closing out the interview. But when you ask, what is your biggest concern, you're really asking for some constructive feedback. It keeps the interviewer from having too easy of an out. But if the interviewer has a concern, now you get a second chance to address it. And if you found out that this concern existed after they made the decision on who they were going to hire, it might be too late. So asking about this during the interview ensures that you have at least one more chance to try and answer that question. Secondly, it also signals to the interviewer that you're not only open to constructive feedback, but you're willing to ask for it. I will seek out constructive feedback as a way of making myself better. This means that you're humble. This means that you're coachable. And this means that you're always looking for ways to improve. These are 3 skills I wish I could bottle and sell. So it's a really great question for the purpose of actually giving you an opportunity to address the concern while also signaling to the interviewer that you have this coachability skill. And now the 4th key to interviewing your interviewer is responding to the answers. Asking questions is great. Actively listening to those answers is better. Responding to those answers accordingly is best. What is the point of asking questions during the interview if you aren't going to respond in a manner that bolsters your candidacy? Take our skills gap question, for example. What skills are this team and organization most in need of to help achieve its mission and vision? Assuming the interviewer identifies a few skills that the organization needs, if you possess one or more of those skills, then talk about your confidence in being able to fill that skills gap and share an example. And if that skill is a weakness of yours, that's okay too. Identify that skill as something that you're also seeking to work on and how much you would love to improve on that skill alongside this new team. If you choose what are some of the most important values at this organization as your company question, listen carefully for value alignment with you and share which of your values line up particularly well with the organization. So for example, if the organization says it really values its work in the community and you happen to volunteer with community groups maybe throughout your college career or throughout other roles that you've held, talk about that. And say to the interviewer, I'm so happy to hear that community involvement is something that is held as very important here. I've been very involved in that in the past through my work with A, B, and C. So I certainly feel as though our values align. We discussed a lot of do's, so just a moment here on the don'ts. Questions about salary or benefits are still not appropriate for the interviewee to bring up in the interview discussion. Even with the competitive talent landscape and a little bit more with salary transparency in the last 1 to 2 years, my advice to interviewees is still to focus on making the best possible case for your candidacy until such a time as an offer discussion or a salary negotiation comes up from the interviewer. You want to discuss compensation and benefits, of course, but by doing it after you've made the best possible case for yourself, you've also maximized your value and your negotiating leverage. As I mentioned earlier, you want to be confident but not cocky. So when do I start or did I get the job? Those aren't effective closes. A much better close that balances humility with confidence is something like, I'm more excited now than ever about this opportunity. Would you be able to share with me the next steps in the process and when I should expect to hear back? Really like that question. Once you have the answer to this question, it's a great point to thank the interviewer for their time, ask for a business card, and walk out with your head held high. Offer or no, if you leave the interview confident that you represented yourself well, that's a point in the win column. I hope this advice provides you with a game plan for your next interview. Please feel free to ask for follow-up questions in the comments section. And your question could always turn into a future video. So subscribe, share, and as always, thank you so much for spending some time with me.